Hi everyone, Macman here. I've just been loading up some 45 ACP and come to the end of what I wanted to do, so I thought I'll change over to 44 mag. So we're going to do a 650 changeover, caliber changeover, and a quick setup on how I do it. So some of the little upgrades I've done on my 650, just to show you, is I have a light just underneath there, and I also have a light on the side there which illuminates all around the tool head a lot better. And basically that's the only upgrade. Oh, I've got the roller shaft here. You can see there's a roller bearing runner there, and other than that, that's pretty much, this one is pretty much stock. I have got a mirror up on top there so I can see how many cases I got left in my case feeder. So like I said, this one's a 45, set up in 45, large pistol primer, and all we're going to do is a caliber changeover for 44 mag. So I have the 45 empty case there, conversion kit, and then the new 44 mag conversion kit here, which is what we're going to use, and we're going to do the swap around. My tool head is already set up. I keep my tool head set up, most of them, on the ones that I load quite a bit of, so we're going to be doing that. So there's your 44 mag 650 tool head. We're going to be using mixed brass. I just got mixed head stamp brass. So I've got some brass there. Primers we're going to use are the CCI large pistol magnum primers, which we have there. I've got some of these 44 hard cast flat point 240 grain projectiles, and I will be honest with you, I bought these from a gun show. They came in a bag. I don't know what make they are, but I've shot them. They shoot really well. They're nice and consistent, 240 grain. And the powder we're going to be using is Hodgkin's little gun. So that's the powder we're going to be using. Picking up my data off the Lineman book, the Lineman 44 mag, and also off the Hodgkin's site, the website, and you can see there it's 240 grain. This one's just says a jacketed hollow point with little gun. Overall length 1600. Starting grains 22.5, ending grains 24.5. So there's a little bit of a scope there. I'm going to be loading on the lighter end, probably around about the 22.5, see how they work, and we'll work up from there. So that's where I'm getting all my data from, guys. So let me just get everything ready and we'll be back. So I like to have everything close at hand. So I have my both boxes, my 45 ACP, which everything is going to be coming off the press into this box, and then we'll be loading all the new parts from that box. So I just like to have them by the side of my press, and as I'm swapping things around, I got everything there and I know what I'm swapping all the right parts around. So that's how I start off with it. And then, sorry, move this over, and we're going to move the camera up. And we'll go through and we're going to do a caliber change. Okay, so we're ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do, we have no shells left. We've used them all up, and all the primers are cleared out, but there was a little bit of powder left. So I was using Winchester WSF powder. So what we're going to do is we're going to just clear a hopper of powder from here. So raise the arm, get the safety return bar off. We can then pop the two pins. Pins come out to hold the tool head, and I can remove the little light we have there. So that then leaves the tool head clear to be pulled out. then we can just, let me turn this, and then all I'm going to do is return the powder nice and slow so you don't spill any back into this jug. And then just to get the last of it out, you can just leave it in and cycle it through a few times. Okay, so we're nice and empty with the powder. There's the 45 tool head all done. So that can go back into the rack. And then we will not be using this powder, so we can get rid of it. This can go back into the storage, where you only need to keep one powder on the bench at a time. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we'll start the rest of the strip down. So we can remove the case feeder tube, that can come out. There's a case feeder adapter which can come out and go into the 45 ACP box. Case feeder arm adapter, that needs to come out, and then the case feeder bushing underneath, we need to take that out and change that over. So I normally just use a little Allen key in here just to crack it off, and then we can unscrew it and take that out from there. And then I like to raise the arm up. Again, there is a lock screw under here which locks this main center bolt to stop it from turning while you're using the machine. So all we need to do is crack that bolt. You can drop it back down and undo the plate bolt and take that out altogether, and the little spring that can come off. And then we can remove the shell plate itself. And it's a little bit dirty, so I like to give it a quick wipe off just before it goes back into the box. It's not too bad. And that can go into the box. The little locating pins we got, we need to pull them out because we'll be changing them over. And the last thing is the little aluminum guide. We need to pull that out as well. So there you go, that's pretty much everything stripped down. All the 45 ACP stuff is out, so it's all in the box. That can be closed and put aside, and it's going to be ready now to load all the 44 mag parts in. Before we do that, we're going to give this a clean, give it a wipe down, because powder and debris can get under the shell plate and also into the primer tube, the primer setup. And when I do a caliper changeover, I always like to take the whole primer system off and give it a clean. So that's what we're going to do next. So we can just remove the primer rod and the low primer warning sensor. Just pop them aside for a minute, and then with an Allen key I'll bring you around this side now so you can see what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be removing these two bolts, and we can take this whole mechanism off. They're not too tight. I'd never put these really tight. They just need to be nipped up to stop them from moving. So we can just wind out the bolts. and the whole primer system comes off in one. And the way we're going to go ahead and we're just going to give that a clean. Put that on the bench just for a second, and then if you look, hopefully you can see here, you can see it's quite dirty. There's little bits of brass, little bits of powder all over here. There's a little bit of grease on there. I'll just wipe that off and clean that off a little bit. And then around the main head as well, there's powder, and we need to clean all that off as well. So let's go ahead and clean the primer mechanism first, and then we'll come back and clean the head. Okay, so let's just go through and give this a nice little clean. So we can start off by taking the cap off and removing the primer tube, and then on the bottom there's just one screw on the bottom. We can just crack that off and take it out, and then this little retaining plate, looks like a little wrench. Keep your finger on the bottom and hold it all together so everything doesn't spring apart. You can just remove that, drop or pull the pin and the little spring washer out, and then also remove the plate. Be careful, there is a spring and a ball in there which we can remove as well. And then we need to remove this whole little bolt and indexing arm and everything out. And there you go. This time it's not too bad. So let me get a clean rag. As you can see, the main in there is not too bad, but we're going to give it a wipe off. And I got some little cans of compressed air where we can just give it a little blow up to remove anything that shouldn't be there. And this is where it's important to keep this really clean, because this indexing arm runs back and forth on here, and if it gets too grubby in there it can hang up and it doesn't index the primers properly, so you're not getting proper indexing of the primers, which is it's a bit of a common fault when these get dirty. They don't they only index halfway, and the primer sits halfway, and when you go to seat it, it's nowhere near in the right position. So if you're getting that with this indexing arm isn't indexing it all the way around, you need to go in and give it a nice clean. So wipe it all down there, so that one's done, and you can see with the pull the little spring off, and the indexing arm itself, you can see that's just a little bit grubby. So we can just go in, clean it all off, wipe it down, get rid of any material that's on there. Primer plate, again, it's not too bad, but I just like to make sure it's clean. Give it a little bit of a blowout, any dust, so that one's done. And again, this is quite important, the actual retaining bolt and spring. You can get powder build up underneath these, and again it can stop the arm from indexing. So we just want to go in, give it a nice little wipe, nice clean. The same with the washer, get anything off that. And I can then sit back on here. The little retaining clip, again, just wipe everything down, being everything's apart. Little ball spring, just blow it out, and the little metal ball, give it a clean. So it's as easy as that, guys, and it saves so much problems when you're indexing your machine and it's not indexing properly. This is mainly the cause. Sometimes this spring, you need to change the spring. You can see it's a little bit bent, but it's not too bad at the moment. This spring can sometimes break, close up, so it doesn't give you the right tension on this, and that causes it as well. So there's a few things around here which can be frustrating, but just by cleaning and checking them every time you do a caliber change, only takes 5-10 minutes, and it's well worth doing. So we're just going to blow the tube out. I'm going to blow the tube as well, make sure there's nothing in there. Everything's nice and clean. And the cap's nice and clean. So we can go back and we can reassemble. So the indexing arm first. Pop the bolt back in. Hopefully you can see this. Putting the spring back onto the arm. And this is the first thing you want to locate back in. So you can see it drops in. There is a cutaway for the spring to sit in. So that goes in there. Bring the arm over and just manipulate it so the bolt goes through. So you can see there, the arm is in the correct place. It's going to work fine. And then all you do is you want to keep pressure on the spring and the bolt from underneath. Your little spring goes in the hole first, then your little ball bearing, and then you want to get your primer plate that just sits in on top there. And then with your thumb you want to squeeze everything together so you can get this little retaining wrench looking plate in place. Rotate it round and there you go, it's all back together and it'll all hold. Start the screw by hand. Finish it off with the Allen key. Again, these things don't need to be super tight, they just need to be nipped up. Getting your tube, that can go back in. Give it a few turns so it locates all the way down where it's supposed to. Cap back on. Again, hand tight, it doesn't need to be super tight. And there you can go, it's all lined up. And then you can just work this. And you can see nice and clean and rotating. And what tends to happen is when this arm and everything gets grubby, it sort of comes halfway and then releases back. And you can see then once this does that, it doesn't really locate again. While it's doing the full rotation, it's perfect. When it's grubby and it sort of stops, and then you're trying to set your primer and you're hitting a dead stop because it's not, and you're having to go in and you're trying to rotate this. So just by keeping this clean and free from debris, it makes such a difference. And there you go. So now we can come back in and we can clean around the tool head and everywhere around here. So there's a little ball and spring here which you don't want to lose. You can always pull that ball out and you can raise the spring out while you're cleaning. And it's the same over here, there's a little retaining indexing plate and a little spring in there as well, which is way down in there. So just be careful. So you want to go in, and I'll go in first. Blow everything out. Get all the loose off. And then get a paper towel. And we can go in, and we want to go in and wipe everything down, get rid of all any debris in there, any little bits of powder, any little bits of brass. Give it a good wipe. And then I can wipe the arm down where we had a little bit of grease on there earlier. Just a wipe off. And then with the blowgun again, you can go in and just blow it all off, get rid of all the debris. And just by doing this every time you do a caliber change, guys, it just makes such a difference. It cuts off a lot of the stupid issues we get with it not indexing properly. So there you go, that one's done that side, and you can see I've cleaned up where the primer mechanism sits as well. It's all nice and clean. You can see that the primer punch is all clean, all ready to go. So let's put the indexing primer back on. So it'll just sit on top, wiggle it around. You can see it sits on the punch over there, 2 bolts wind them down a little bit by hand to start them. And then we can get the hex key and just wind them down just so they touch. Bring the other one down till they touch, and then we can just nip them. Just snug again, don't have to be stupid tight. And then if I just move this camera back a little bit, I can rotate the arm, so then you can see all working, cycling the shaft, everything's nice and nicely done. So back up on top, then all I need to do then is replace my sensor. Low primer sensor can sit back on, and the rod can go back in. I just like to sit it there while I'm getting everything else ready. That's a 45 case on top of it, guys, if you can see that. Just bring you in on that. It's a 45 ACP case, which is I use, and I just sit it on top of this primer rod. Just gives it a little bit of extra weight. It's not too much, it's just enough. So it just sits there with a little bit of weight to keep pushing the primers down. So there you go. Let's take it back around the other side and we'll start rebuilding the other side. So first we can get the case body bushing, which is the large, and we can just, again, just sits up underneath, start the thread off with your hand, wind it all the way in, and then once it doesn't go any further, you just want to get a little hex key. There is holes going through it, and then we can just go through here and just gently snug it up. Again, it doesn't need a lot, it can just be snugged up. And then from there then we can go in and the case arm bushing. Again, just make sure it's clean. A little bit grubby, a little bit dirty. So you can just go in. I just like to go in and run. Just pull the towel through it. Just cleans up the inside. And then that'll just sit in the arm. Like that. And then the case feeder adapter just sits in. There's a groove in the back, groove in this. You just want to line that up into there. Just sits there. And then we can replace the tube. Tube is grubby. Next time I go to Dillon I might pick up a couple more of these. These are getting a bit grubby. And just mount it. And then with the tube, turn it and push it all the way up to the case feeder. You don't want any gap here. See how it up and down? Just screws it all the way up so it's contact in the case feeder. That's where I like to have it. Drop this back down. Okay. I've already got the large case feeder adapter plate inside the case feeder for large pistols. We don't need to change that. So we've done all the primer side and the case side, so now we can just go ahead and we can finish off in here. So you get the little spring first that we removed, which sits in there, and the little ball bearing, the indexing ball bearing, sits on top. Once you put it in, push it down a couple of times just to make sure there's no restriction, it's not sticking, you know everything's good. That just sits in there like that. And then the little rotating arm we took out, again, that needs to go back in, and that just sits in there like that. So with everything back together, we can then grab the little aluminum plate that guides the brass from when they drop in through the case feeder onto the shell plate. So again, we can just give that a quick wipe down, and that just locates. You just pull the arm back just a touch, and it just drops in, and that locates and sits there where this arm is. Now we can grab the shell plate. I'm just going to wipe it off a little bit, make sure it's clean, and and just blow. Blow all the little grooves out where the shells go in, all nice and clean. And then we can sit that up on top. You want to get your spring located into the back hole and just sit it there, and then with your locking bolt will go down all the way through and then wind it down. So I like to take this down so it's tight, and you can feel that this is very tight. Move in, and then I turn it back maybe 1/8 of a turn until the plate feels that it's rotating nice. So all the way down so it tucks up, then back it back about 1/8 of a turn. Bring the arm up and then go in and tighten up the little hex screw that locks this center bolt. So just going in. Again, not super tight, just enough. And what you want to do is you want to drop this back down nice and slowly, and you can feel how this rotates the shell plate. And if you've gone too tight with this bolt, you'll feel it gripping. You can see there's not too much movement there, and that's moving nice and slow, and it's perfect. So that's set right. And this bolt won't move now because we've tightened up the lock bolt on it. With the arm all the way up, it's time you can put a little bit of lube. So I use this thin oil, it's thin engine oil, or you can pick up these little pots of oil. I bought this from Dillon, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a little bit of oil on that side, the same on the back end, and then just work it. Just work it a few times, and you'll feel straight away, as soon as you put this oil on, this arm starts to move a little bit easier. We can go underneath and just put a couple of little drips underneath, so the whole thing is getting lubed. Just work that oil into it, and you can feel there's no grippiness there, there's no drag in there now, it's moving nice. So a little bit of oil on there. These little locating pins to hold the cases in the shell plate, we can add those. And then the conversion box is empty. A bit of dirt in there, closed up and put to the side. So that's basically the conversion kit set up here. Tool head, which I've already have set up from last time I used it, but we will go through and make sure the adjustments are all right on that before going any further making loads. So you can just slot that in. The locating pins, just drop them in to hold the tool head in place. Return the light back into the center, like that. And then the fail-safe rod goes back into both these arms. And what you want to do the first time you put it in is slowly push the arm down, and you can see I'm totally compressing the spring. Let's bring this around. This needs to adjust every time you change the tool head over. Just get in, I'll show you what we're talking about. So this little spring here, as I push the arm down, see it's fully compressing before the arm's all the way back. So pull it back, unwind this bolt a little bit, take it way down out of the way, and then you can see we go into the stop, and then the spring then isn't fully compressed. So you just adjust that up. There you go. And then you can rotate it. You can see there that is set where it needs to be. Bring it back to the side. And there you go. So you can get this done in probably less than 10 minutes. And I've seen a lot of people commenting, I don't like the 550s or the 650s because it's a pain to change from caliber to caliber. Well, you basically saw everything there as a caliber change. The only difference we do is, because we're pulling this rod off, this priming system off, if we're going to go from large primer to small primer, when we're taking this rod, the system off, all we do is we'd replace the plate with a small primer plate instead of the large one, which you've already got it stripped down to clean, so it doesn't add any extra time. And then there is the primer like push pin underneath. It's in a little mechanism, and it just unbolts, screws out, put that one in and screw it back in. So changing over calipers from small to large pistol primers or rifle primers, if you're doing this sort of the way I do it, it doesn't add any extra time to change it because you've already got everything stripped down. There's one extra item you've got to pull out, which is the little push rod, which takes a few seconds to unscrew and put a new one back in. So you can see the changeover doesn't take long. You're cleaning it at the time, you're lubing it, and you're making sure everything's set up right. So there you go. So that's your caliper change, guys. So what we're going to do next is we're going to come back and we're going to make sure everything is set up, everything's working for reloading. So we'll go around and we can maybe make a dummy roundup and we can see how that all works.